There's an issue on extending the presidential term limits, and this has been the current agenda in the country. However, today I want us to look at some of the components that structures this motion as it awaits debate in the Senate. And that includes the issue on public participation, and the issue on the Senate sponsoring the motion, debating on it. So it starts by the legality of extending the president's term limit or the term limit for governance. And also talk about the history of the issue on extension of the term limits. There we'll discuss about plan, we'll discuss about factors, we'll discuss about the participants in it. Another thing, we'll talk about the positive effects and the negative impacts in the term limits. And also we'll talk about the procedure for it to be ratified in the Constitution. In comparison, we will revisit some of the motions that have been put on hold in the National Assembly. And that one will include things like the BBI initiative, the NADCO report, among others. So we will first begin with the legality of the motion. The Constitution amendment proposals involved several stakeholders in 2009 and 2010. And this culminated the 5-year term for elective posts in the country. It never involved a few parliamentarians, not even the Senate. The people went through referendum to approve the domain of governance in the Constitution. And currently we have the Senate that is trying to sponsor the extension of the term limits for the politicians in various positions. So in as much as it is in the Senate, we came to realize that actually the motion is being presented before the Senate as a censure of administrative functions. And that means that in as much as it will be in the Senate, they will only listen to what it entails. Furthermore, before it sails through from the Senate, then the issue will move to the National Assembly. The motion will move to the National Assembly. So, in comparison, from 2010 and today, that is a gap of 14 years. Within 14 years, then we realize that this motion has changed, has been changing. It has moved from the hands of the people, and it is now in the hands of the Senate. It is now in the hands of the politicians. It is like an amendment of a section of the Constitution. So we have the history of the president's term limit, and for those who are in other platforms, those who are in the Zoom, for those who are in the Zoom, those who are in if you are using the meeting door, or maybe you are using the social platforms, the message is still the same. The message is one. The information we are providing here is across. It doesn't change whether you are in this platform, there are others. There's no problem. So I've talked about the legality. In legality is that currently you are dealing with amendment of a section of the Constitution that talks about the term limit. And the question is, between the National Assembly and the Senate, which house directly represents the will of the people? Directly represents the people at the constituencies, because we have the Senate that is presenting the county interests, but we have the National Assembly that represents the constituents. So history of the president's term limit, that means that the basic resounding history during the second president's era, that is the late President Moi, we saw him ruling for 24 years, and the various techniques that he used to ensure that he rules for those 24 years, including the interference term limits, the interference with the administrating functions, and polarization of the National Assembly. What currently happens in Kenya is that what the head of state or the regime has ensured it does is that it holds the majority together with the speaker. They all hold the majority in both the Senate and the National Assembly, and this applies across several counties in Kenya. So we have the first state in which the issue on extending the presidential term limits in Kenya resurfaced in 2017 due to the political pressure by then, which existed in 2017. And that one, by that time, we had a group, we had the NASA movement, and we had the Jubilee movement, among others. And this means that the political pressure escalated to an extent whereby there was demand that the constitution should be amended so that the term limit can be extended to allow the political pressure to be reduced. However, it never succeeded, and there were higher demands from the opposition later on, where we saw that the office of, especially from the office of the deputy president, and later on, after 2018 handshake, there was cumulation of what is called the BBI initiative, the Building Bridges initiative. And the Building Bridges initiative came immediately after the former President Uhuru Kenyatta realized that there were plans to impeach him out of the presidency. But this never succeeded due to the handshake influence. However, the push for the extending the term limit never died, and it was one of the proposals that were provided for the Building Bridges initiative, but it flopped. There were proposals that it should be moved from 5 years to 7 years, but it flopped. And that means that the owners, the previous owners of the motion of the proposal of extending the term limit during the BBI initiative are the same factions that are currently participating in it. And because it never died, the owners who endured and persuaded themselves to distance themselves from the regime to form a political party. That one is in 2021. We can all remember that in 2021 we had a case in June whereby there was rivalry about the ownership of the Jubilee Headquarters. And after that meeting, there were plans that were established on the table. So during the sitting at the Jubilee Headquarters in 2021, the issue of presidential term limits resurfaced again. But the big issue was how to win the elections, funding, and how to form the government. So they had to deal with first things first. The former President Uhuru even warned Kenyans about the possibility of extending the term limits, and this has come into reality because he must have known what he was talking about by then. And he must have also learnt it during the push for BBI and the proposals that were submitted to be included. And because some of these proposals failed during the culmination of BBI, they have resurfaced again. And this warning was persistent and consistent from the former president from 2021 until June 2022, when he was addressing a local media house during a forum. So after the elections in Kenya 2022, the matter resurfaced again during a State House dinner in 2023, where a senior politician was asked if it is possible that they can revisit the issue on the term limits for the president. Because due to the protests that happened, it is believed that the regime never found enough time to plan the administrative functions and services. And this senior politician gave a nod for a trial on the motion. But due to the continuous political tantrums across the country and diplomatic pressure, the proposal was put on a staircase, in other words on hold, until harmony in politics was to be achieved. And when we talk about harmony in politics, currently we have the opposition. We can say that the country, the governance in Kenya has been harmonized by involving some of the opposition into the regime and inviting other influential individuals to take key positions in the government. And through this harmonizing strategy, now we have the introduction of the extension of term limits. That means that he who is eyeing for the AU seat will have to convince his people to ensure that there is no fear of contradiction. There is no contradiction on what is being presented before the houses, the two houses of parliament, that is the Senate and the National Assembly. So also we have majority of the Mount Kenya politicians, including the impeached deputy president and cabinet secretaries, who were against the motion immediately after it was introduced in 2023. But this never sounded well with some of other politicians from the Rift Valley region. And there was a master plan on how to tame them, on how to deal with them, on how to ensure that any individual that is against the motions that are presented by the regime in the interest of the government or in the interest of the people would have to be whipped directly or indirectly. So you will see that some of these individuals, even the Mount Kenya politicians, they will come out to oppose the motion, but only by word of mouth. Why am I talking about word of mouth? It is due to the fear of dominance in the National Assembly and the Senate. So the majority group, the majority factions has the influence of the president, has the influence of the executive. So it will be very difficult to avoid going against the will of the executive or whatever shall be planned by the National Security Council, because that is where the strength of power comes from. you will also realize that the opposition is set to be fooled that key symbols in the regime are against it, not knowing that the idea began its journey 7 years. I've mentioned that it began all the way in 2017 and not today. So it is a long journey in to curb the issue on the extension of the term limits, in as much as today as this session is being produced or is being aired, you will realize that the public participation is for the constitution, but the plan has been rooted, and it is the mandate, or it is the responsibility of the Kenyans to understand the constitution, interpret it, and defend it accordingly, using either their representatives or through publicity. We have other components such as the procedure application of the constitution, especially when it has been amended. What will be the procedure to be followed to ensure that the people accept the amendment? It is not a transformational change of the whole constitution. Another component, we have the effects of change the presidential term limits, or the term limits of governance. There can be positive effects and there can be negative effects. So we all have I would like to let you people to figure out some of the procedures that this motion will have to follow to ensure that it affects it, to ensure that it impacts the country either positively or negatively, and also it impacts the future generation, because the decision that is being made today will affect the future generation. The politicians, if they make a mistake today, then that mistake will have to haunt even the future generation. Allow me to adjourn the lesson, the session as at. Thank you.